Hello my dear students, welcome back to the class. So in the previous class we started chapter number 2, that was growth of nationalism, and we discussed a few factors which were responsible for the growth of nationalism, in which we discussed economic exploitation, repressive colonial policy, socio-religious reform movement, with a special reference to Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyotiba Phule. So, dear students, those who have not watched the previous video, the link of the previous video I have shared in the description box, so please do watch it. Today we will discuss these 4 topics: Ilbert Bill controversy, role of press, influence of Western education, rediscovery of India's past. Okay, and then if we get time, the 8th one also we discuss, that is modern means of transport and communication. So how these factors were responsible for the growth of nationalism, we are going to discuss. Okay children, so let's start with the first topic which I have given over here is Ilbert Bill controversy. Okay, or it is also known as Ilbert Bill, but mostly I call it Ilbert Bill. Okay, so during that time, let me tell you the background of the bill, why it was introduced and why it was needed. So during that time, my dear, the Indian judges were not allowed to hear the cases of the Europeans. Okay, so when Lord Ripon became the viceroy after Lord Lytton, when Lord Ripon became the viceroy, he was of the opinion that why not we allow the Indian judges to hear the cases of the Europeans. That is why he introduced a bill, okay, in the Viceroyalty Executive Council, which would empower the Indian judges to hear the cases of the Europeans. Even the Europeans can be tried by the Indian judges. Okay, so when this bill was introduced, the name of the bill was Ilbert Bill, because Sir Courtney Ilbert, he was the law member in the Viceroyalty Executive Council. Okay, so he introduced the bill, and the tenure of the viceroy was, at the time, who was the viceroy? Lord Ripon was the viceroy. So definitely he was also involved in this. Okay, so Lord Ripon wanted to do some favor for the Indian judges who could be allowed to hear the cases of the Europeans. That is why this bill was introduced. So when this bill was introduced, the European community in India reacted to it. They were not at all ready to share their position with the Indian judges. Okay. On the other hand, Ilbert Bill was warmly welcomed by the Indians, but faced bitter opposition from the British. The European community, mostly the member of the Bar Council of the European judges and all, they were not at all ready to share their position of hearing the cases of the Europeans with the Indian judges. So it was like a white mutiny was started against the Ilbert Bill. Okay, because when the law is not at all ready, it is known as bill. When the bill is passed by the parliament, then it becomes an act. So still that bill remained a bill. Okay, so fierce agitation was started by the European against the bill, which forced the government to withdraw the bill. Now the question comes over here: how this topic is responsible for the growth of nationalism? How? It was a matter of Europeans against the government. Europeans were against the government. Indians were not involved at all there. Thus, it was that they wanted to favor the Indian judges to hear the cases of Europeans. But on the other hand, Europeans protested against the passing of the bill. Then the bill was withdrawn under severe pressure. So, what is the role of this agitation? So, here the Indians realized that if we pressurize the government unitedly, then definitely we can get some result. Okay, so it clearly showed the racial discrimination of the Europeans, because they did not want to share it. They did not want, because one person is trying to favor the Indian judges, whereas the European community at large, they are not ready to accept the bill, which favors the Indian judges to hear the cases of the Europeans. This is all about Ilbert Bill. Next one is role of press. So what is mean by press? Press means that press is of two types. Okay, we call it electronic media and the print media. Electronic, and we are talking in simple language, we are talking about newspapers. We are talking about news which is spread in two forms, through writing on paper or through televisions and all. But during that time print media was very, very strong. Print media played a very, very important role in arousing political consciousness among the people of India. Role of press. During that time, my dear, many of the Indian newspapers were there. Many of the Indian leaders, they had their own newspapers who edited them, and they tried to highlight the true nature of the British administration in the country. They wanted to make the Indians conscious what is happening in India. What actually is the British government doing in India? How is the exploitation going on? So that consciousness, that message was spread among the people through the newspapers. Okay, so it should be a role of press. One more we can add later on, that is literature. Okay, role of press. Now, during the second half of the 19th century, many of the vernacular newspapers were introduced, my dear, and that strengthened the nationalistic spirit among the Indian people. They became more and more conscious regarding their rights. They became more and more aware what is happening in the country. The messages which was shared through the newspapers reached to the people, and they understood. Press became a main instrument through which nationalist Indians spread their messages of patriotism, okay, along with socio-economic as well as political ideas were also spread among them, okay. And not only that, nationalist newspapers criticized the government. They exposed the true nature of British administration. What they were doing was criticized, and they focused on the work of the British government, making the people conscious. This is what British government is doing in all. Because most of the people were very much indifferent. They did not bother what is happening in the country. So it was necessary at that time to make the people conscious that this is your country and these Britishers are foreigners ruling over you by snatching your right. That was done. Because that time it was not possible to go from one place to another or hold meeting all the time. We were talking about India. So how to spread the message all over India? So only means to spread the message was through writing, and that was done through newspapers. Messages were written in the newspapers through to unite, to bring unity among the people. Why? To go against the British rule, to end the British rule, and to demand for self-government. It helped them to exchange their views among one another. When Vernacular Press Act was passed, this paper criticized the act. Why this act was passed? It was criticized by Amrit Bazar Patrika. Okay, so this were some of the many more papers were also there that played a very, very important role in arousing political consciousness among the people, as well as spreading messages among the people throughout the country to unite the people to go against the British rule and to end it, as well as to demand for self-government. Self-government, that means Swaraj, self-rule. Okay, so I am adding it over here one more. Role of press. The role of press and literature. Along with the press, Indian literatures also played a very, very important role. Literatures included novels, essays, poetry. All this aroused a feeling of patriotism among the Indians. Examples like Banking Chandra Chatterjee, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and Ravindranath Tagore in Bengali. Okay, Bharatendu Harishchandra in Hindi, Subramaniam Bharati in Tamil, and Vishnu Sastri Chiplonkar in Marathi. They were some of the eminent writers. They were the eminent novelist writers. Okay, they wrote on the theme of patriotism. The main motive of this writer was to arouse patriotism among the people. Literature played a very, very important role. I mean, people used to read novels. Nowadays, people have lost the habit of reading the novels, right? But that time, that was the message through which, that was the means through which people could read and can be inspired by the heroic deeds of the hero of the novels. Okay, so literature enabled Indians to imbibe modern values, stress on equality of men. Okay, so these are the examples, and it aroused number 1 consciousness, number 2 national unity, number 3 patriotism, and number 4 love for the country. Okay, dear. Now, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's novel, famous novel, you must know it. Famous novel Anand Math became the Bible of the nationalist. Okay, Bande Mataram, the famous patriotic song in the novel, became the battle cry of the nationalist, and later the national song of India. Bharatendu Harishchandra, he had written a drama play. The name of the play was Bharat Durdasa. In English it is known as India's Misery. It was an outstanding work evoking patriotism. You will be by going through that, by reading that play, definitely you will be filled with patriotism and you will be ready to sacrifice your life for your country. What is patriotism? I told you in the beginning, patriotism, love for a country. That means you are ready to sacrifice your life for a country. Those soldiers who are on the border areas, they have given their life. They know what is going to happen. If there will be a war, they will be ready to give their life for the country. It doesn't mean that they will run away from the borders. No, my dear, they have decided to sacrifice and protect their country from the enemies. That is patriotism, love for your country. So we also can do so. We can show patriotism through different means. Like I am doing my job. I am trying to educate the children. That is also a patriotism. I love my country. I want my country to grow. I want my country to develop in future. So definitely I am doing my part as an Indian. You are doing your part as an Indian. So students as an Indian can do their part by studying and doing hard work and doing some great work for your country in future. All these are patriotism. Love for your country. Ready to sacrifice your life for your country. Okay, children? So all these things we understand that these things are very important to understand. So we discussed the role of press and literature. These two topics we discussed. The next one, very important, influence of Western education. You know that Raja Ram Mohan Roy and many of the other social reformers, they always wanted to reform the society to free the Indians to come out from the social evils being followed by the society. Lot of social practices were there in our society, right? So in order to free the people of the society from the blind faith and superstitions, education was very much required, my dear. Number one, right? And to study the European culture and European mind and theories of liberty, equality and fraternity, education was very important. That is why Raja Ram Mohan Roy wanted English education to be introduced in our country. So with the help of Lord William he introduced in our country also. So it is mentioned Wood Dispatch in 1854. Okay, it led to the establishment of universities in Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, on the model of London University. On the model of London University, these universities were set up in India. So this was the beginning of Western education in our country. So now what next? How did the Western education influence the mind of the people? What changes was seen in the Indian society, Indian life of the Indians? So one by one I am going to tell you, my dear. This Western education, my dear, gave the Indians modern, rational, secular, democratic and nationalist political outlook. A great thing. It gave a different outlook to the Indians. Modern look, rational, okay, than democratic and national political outlook. Nationalist political outlook. Okay. Indians learned to study. When Western education was introduced in our country, Indians learned to study and admire and were influenced by contemporary nationalist movement. What all movements were going on in the other part of the world, they were inspired by that. They were very much inspired, contemporary movements. Okay, and then they also were very much influenced by the writings of a great political philosophers like Rousseau was there, John Stuart Mill was there. Okay, and even they were very much influenced by the nationalist movement led by Mazzini, Count Keber. Okay, they were the great leaders when Italy was unified. Italy was unified by the great effort of Mazzini, Count Keber, Garibaldi. They unified the country. So this type of nationalistic movement, when they heard it, when they studied it, okay, definitely they were also very much inspired. They were very much inspired. You understand? They studied about French Revolution. They studied about American War of Independence. So from where did they come to know? They studied in the books. Right? They studied in colleges and universities. So this movement inspired their life. Okay? And Western thinkers also influenced their mind. So educated Indians, my dear, began to feel the humiliation. They started to feel humiliated. How can a foreign rule humiliate us in this way? And lot of evils had been imposed upon us. They started to feel, no, we need to unite ourselves. We need to free ourselves. We need to unite ourselves. We need to become very, very strong. Right? So definitely you know, my dear. You go to school, what do we learn? That revolutionize our life. The person who don't go to school, their life is different. Our life is different. In terms of monetary thing, it is different. But in terms of knowledge, we get knowledge while going to schools and colleges and universities. Our life completely changes. So our outlook changes, our way of thinking changes, our opinion changes. The books which we read have an impact on us. The topics which we study at school have an impact on us. So definitely, my dear, the modern outlook started to begin in the life of our people. So not only that, my dear, English language, because all those English schools started teaching them in English, and the medium of language was English. So English became the medium of communication. English became the medium of exchange. I speak in English, you understand it. When you speak in English, I understand. So English became the medium of exchange. So how this became possible? Because I started to study English. Okay, so English education not only helped us, it exposed the Indians to the Western thoughts. Got it? Like liberty, equality, fraternity, I told you. Today when we study French Revolution, when our history teacher teaches you French Revolution, definitely you come to know about the three magical words: equality, liberty, equality and fraternity, which is also engraved in our constitution, in our preamble. Liberty, equality and fraternity. So this was the idea introduced after the French Revolution. So that time French Revolution already had taken place, and people came to study about it. People studied about French Revolution, and they were very much inspired by liberty, equality. American War of Independence. In America, the 13 colonies fought against the British rule. They became successful. If they can become successful, my dear, why can't we? If we unitedly, jointly fight against the British government, we can also become successful. So all this became possible due to the introduction of Western education. This English language became the medium of communication. Now I can express my thoughts and opinions in language. Like when we discuss about the role of press, at that time English papers were also there, English papers. So many of the thoughts were expressed and shared in English papers. Western education, though, was an English education system which spoiled the Oriental system of education on one hand, but on the other hand, it also played a very important role in enlightening the minds of the youths who later on understood the proper way to place their demands in front of the British and to free themselves from the British rule in a constitutional and in a legal way. Okay, hope you have understood this part. So now, this part, rediscovery of India's past. Rediscovery. Now, Europeans, or we can say that the British government, the British were of the attitude that these Indians are born to be ruled. They are to be dominated. They have never been rulers of the country. They don't know how to rule the country. These Indians are immature, uncivilized, and they are unfit to govern themselves. That was their opinion. We also have a history, we also have a past, but today we know that we have a past. But who were the one who rediscovered our past? Our ancient civilization was brought forward to us. Who brought this? Who did it? Okay, that also we'll discuss. Okay. The Hindus and the Muslims had always fought against each other. That was the history they have presented. Hindus and Muslims, always they fought against each other and they were destined to be ruled by foreigners. That was their opinion. They thought like that. Okay. They described Indian religion and social customs as degrading. Our social custom and religions are degrading. This had demoralizing effect on the Indians. This demoralized the Indians. If you tell me, okay, you are good for nothing, you have no history, definitely I'll be demoralized. I'll become negative. A negative blood will flow in my body. So definitely, if somebody else comes and feels positivity in my life that no, we have a great history, we were great leaders of the world, we were fighters, we belong to this family, okay, warrior family and all, definitely that will give me a lot of encouragement. So negativity and positivity. So they always had Britishers, they always had a feeling that Indians, they were never rulers. They could not rule their country. They were divided in number of kingdoms. They always used to fight among themselves. Okay, Hindu, Muslim, they fought against themselves. So it was at this time, my dear, when this type of situation was there, it was at this time that nationalist leaders and Orientalist historians rediscovered India's glorious past. Nationalist historians, my dear, okay, nationalist leader and Orientalist historians rediscovered our past. Rediscovery means what had happened in the past. We know about Harappan civilization, we know about Indus Valley civilization, we know all these things. But who did it? Who brought in front of us? What is the present situation? I know it, but what happened yesterday, somebody else has to tell me. So, history was recreated. Okay, the culture, the past, glorious past and the rich cultural heritage, my dear, was brought in front of the people. Okay, and this aroused Indians, or we can say that this aroused a feeling of self-confidence among the Indians when I saw my past. So, credit goes to some of the European scholars, my dear. Credit goes to some of the European scholars. So, European scholars must be credited, my dear. Not all Europeans were, we can say, bad, but many of them, they wanted to know about our past. What actually is the history of India? What actually is the past of India? So, European scholars like William Jones, Max Muller, John Marshall, they showed to the world, my dear. They were the one, these three people were the one to show to the world the spiritual and the greatness of India. The greatness of India was brought in front of the world. One by one. James Princip deciphered, means made it readable. He read it, understood it, what was written. James Princip deciphered the Ashokan inscription. What was written on the Ashokan pillar inscription, that was read by him. He understood it, deciphered. Okay. Max Muller translated the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita was there, and that was translated by Max Muller. Sir John Marshall played a key role. You have known, I taught you history in class 9. So, Sir John Marshall played a key role in the discovery of ancient cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, my dear. So, all this became possible due to their effort. So, our civilization is hidden and it is brought up by the great effort of this people. So after going to Harappan civilization, we feel proud. Our civilization is not so bad, my dear. All these things already had happened in the past. We were an urban civilization. Town planning, these, that, all we know about us. So when we try to find out, little bit of hard work is required to find out the past, but it was brought. So when this glorious past was brought in front of Indian people and was brought in front of the world, my dear, that filled the Indians with courage, as well as filled with positivity and confidence. So, the rediscovery of India's past, my dear, not only aroused the feeling of patriotism and unity, but enabled the Indians to counter-attack the British propaganda. Counter-attack the British propaganda, my dear. So, we should not feel low, my dear, that we always have been ruled. Today, we became successful in freeing our country because of all these efforts. First of all, Western education, the rediscovery of the past, knowing about my past. We were not like this before. But many of the people may think, no, when my father's time, Sultanate period was there, Mughal period was there. Before that, Sultanate period was there. Okay? And when the Mughal period ended, British rule was there. So from more than 400, that means from 1206, let us say, rough calculation, from 1206 to 1947, India was under foreign rule. From 1206, that is from the beginning of Delhi Sultanate. In 1526, Mughal period started. So 1206 to 1947, whose rule was there in our country? Foreign rule. Mughals were not our people. Sultanate were also not our people. They were foreigners. They came, they settled, and they started ruling our country. So did we see our rule? Did we ever see our rulers ruling our country? We did not get a chance. We were dominated by the foreign rule. So definitely, my dear, the generation, the coming generation, the new generation should know about the past. Then only they can feel proud of their rich and cultural heritage of our country. If you go to Ajanta and Ellora cliffs, great paintings are there, great statues are there. All these are the culture reflected in the past. Somebody has done it. So every country, they have the past. So this is all about the rediscovery of India's past. So we must be grateful to those great scholars, William Jones, Max Muller, John Marshall. They were the one who brought our past in front of the world, my dear, and which aroused the feeling of patriotism and unity among the people. So ultimately, this was we became fully independent and courageous and started to live an independent and prosperous life due to their effort also, my dear. So we should not ignore their contribution. So altogether, we have completed all the important topics. Stay safe. We'll meet again in the next class. Thank you very much for listening me. Bye-bye.